I showed somebody Labyrinth for the first time today, which gave me an excuse to watch it. It's one of my favorite movies of all time, so I was hyped. And it's still really, really good. I have yet to meet anyone who hates that movie. If it's not your thing, I could get that. But I feel like, how could anybody hate that movie? Not that I've ever met anyone who has. It's just one of those thoughts that came into my head. Interestingly enough, there are some really cool behind-the-scenes featurettes on that movie on how they did a lot of the cool technical wizardry. Labyrinth feels like it was directed by a magician because of all the cool optical illusions in the set design and all the rhymes and riddles. It's a fairy tale, very much in the style of The Wizard of Oz, but with a very Princess Bride feel to it. Maybe less of the Princess Bride's sass and more into the set design. My favorite shot in the whole thing is in the beginning when she's first in the labyrinth and the worm's telling her to go through the wall because there's openings all over the place, and she walks through that wall and you don't see the illusion coming, and it still blows my mind every single time. There's all sorts of stuff, but that one especially gets me. So it's just how they were able to disguise it. I have yet to see a movie that looks as cool as Labyrinth does, but I don't expect it to. Labyrinth is really so unique and so its own thing. I love the songs. My favorite part is obviously David Bowie because he so owns it. He so takes command, has such a strong presence. He's somebody who is so fabulous and yet so intimidating. Now, the person who watched it with me and I both got very different things out of this movie because he saw it as a metaphor for addiction and I saw it as a metaphor for abusive relationships. But we both agreed that ultimately it's coming back to some form of fantasy and escapism. And it's a movie you can really unpack and overanalyze and enjoy all the rhymes and riddles. Really enjoy the journey. It's a cool journey, and it's like many fairy tales. Labyrinth is very much a cautionary tale. That's what a lot of fairy tales were supposed to be. Like a Little Red Riding Hood, a don't stray from the path. And you can interpret that in a variety of ways. Or any of that stuff. Oh, a lot of fairy tales I've noticed were along the veins of Snow White. Oh, watch out for mean, jealous people. And there's a reason those stories lasted, because they're still extremely relevant. Funny thing about Labyrinth is that I discovered it in middle school and was instantly hooked. Fell in love with it right away. I thought Jennifer Connelly looks pretty much like how I did as a young teen. Still see it. And it took me a couple dozen viewings to notice that David Bowie was wearing really tight pants. That had to be pointed out to me after I watched a feature that was airing at the time. My mom knew how much I liked the movie, and she says, "Oh, you might like this. They're showing features on how this was made." Learned really cool stuff, and they were talking about David Bowie's pants. I thought, really? Wait, I never noticed that. And of course, that's the part that a lot of people like to make fun of, even though it was intentional. It took me way too long to notice. I don't even pay attention too much anyways. It's kind of funny. So many people, I think this just shows the charisma of David Bowie, but I'll read YouTube comments. A lot of people think that he's the ideal boyfriend. He's really not. I see that particular character as a metaphor for a vice, as some kind of temptation, which goes back to a lot of fairy tale stories, and yeah, it's supposed to be exactly that, tempting, played by a rock star. But ultimately, when you get close enough, there you do see the abuse, and you can't really, you're not always going to see it until it's too late. So that's what is so cool about Sarah standing up for herself, and Sarah with her line, "You have no power over me," which is there's such a no, excuse me. There's such a very elegant simplicity to that movie. The right people came together, the right cast, the right designers, the right company. I'm coughing in excitement. And made something so stunning and so beautiful. It's so artistic and so, you don't have to think about it at all. You can just enjoy it, or you can really think about it. There's something for a lot of different people. And there's such a wide variety of character personalities that I feel like you could really take to any one of them. Now, I personally like David Bowie. I liked Sarah as a kid. I like David Bowie, Jareth the Goblin King now. Just because he's fun and engaging, and he's so commanding. The use of glitter in this movie, has anyone ever talked about that? This movie has so much glitter in the background, and it works to its advantage. Because it's a gritty, dirty movie. In terms of how the set looks, it looks like it's wonderful, but also very sinister. Now, the person I watched with said, when he was watching the Dance Magic dance scene, he said, for as charming and bright as this movie is, all those goblins are stolen babies. I'd never thought about that before. Legitimately good point. I wonder if they were all from girls named Sarah. Hoggle says, of course you are. First scene he meets her. So she could have been the one Sarah that escaped. Conspiracy, maybe? Yeah, I really like, especially like the Escher room. It's just because the CGI, the few elements of CGI that are in this movie are not very good. The blue screen's not very good. The owl looks like a screensaver from the 90s, but I find even though the CGI is not that great, it's the few technical elements that are not up to par with the rest of it, but I still find that the flaws really make it really engaging too. Because it's part of the personality of it. It's really cool. It's part of the art. I have a soft spot for dated CGI. I think part of it's because of all the early CGI that was in cartoons around the early 2000s. For some reason, especially in the Scooby-Doo movie, I have a soft spot for it. Not sure why. But in Labyrinth has so much detail in its story, in the writing, in the visuals, in Sarah's room. The foreshadowing in that movie is so good. You see everything in her room come into play, and you see how she grows up through this movie, but is still taking a piece of her childhood with her. She's not renouncing it completely. Like she says, there's always going to be a point where she'll need her friends. She'll need that childhood happy place. But she can't live in that fantasy world forever. So it's got such a good message to it. That idea of don't grow up too fast, but you gotta grow up sometime. Or another, that was my 8th grade yearbook quote. I made it up. But this also idea of you don't stop playing because you get old because you stop playing. And I like that. You can still be true to, you can still like the things you like as a kid, but you gotta be a part of the real world. Which is a very strong message from a very strong film.